What happens when a woman who spent years in the eye of a political hurricane finds peace in the arms of a fallen legend, only to watch his world shatter once again? Vanessa Trump has always been a master of the quiet exit, but as Tiger Woods faced the flashing lights of a Martin County jail, the world waited for the one thing she never gives, a statement. Behind the closed gates of Jupiter Island, a story of loyalty, pain, and a very private ultimatum is unfolding. Today, we peel back the curtain on the woman standing in the center of Tiger's storm. For years, Vanessa Trump was a woman defined by her last name and the heavy shadows of one of the world's most scrutinized families. After her 2018 divorce from Donald Trump Jr., she didn't choose the path of the tell-all book or the reality television circuit. Instead, she chose silence. She retreated to the sun-drenched privacy of Florida, focusing on the daunting task of raising 5 children in a world that refused to stop talking about them. Psychologically, Vanessa was in a state of recalibration, seeking a life where she could be a person rather than a headline. Then, in 2024, her path crossed with Tiger Woods. At first glance, it seemed an unlikely pairing, but beneath the surface, they were two sides of the same coin. Both had experienced the crushing weight of public fallout, both understood what it felt like to have their private failures broadcast to the masses. For Tiger, Vanessa wasn't a trophy or a fan, she was someone who spoke the language of survival. Their relationship blossomed in the high-walled sanctuaries of Jupiter Island, built on a foundation of shared privacy and a mutual desire for a second act that didn't involve a camera lens. Vanessa appeared to have finally found her safe harbor. She was seen walking the grounds of the exclusive Medalist Golf Club, looking more relaxed than she had in a decade. Tiger, in turn, seemed to have found a grounding force. He wasn't just a golfer anymore, he was a partner who attended school events and quiet dinners. The emotional stakes were high. This wasn't just a romance, it was a recovery mission for two people who had been deeply burned by their pasts. They had created a bubble where the name Trump and the name Woods meant family, not controversy. But bubbles are inherently fragile. As the spring of 2026 arrived, the stability they had fought so hard to maintain began to vibrate with a familiar, dangerous tension. In the early afternoon of March 27, while the Florida sun beat down on the quiet streets of Jupiter Island, a single phone call was placed that would shatter the silence Vanessa had spent years perfecting. The arrest of Tiger Woods in March 2026 didn't happen under the cover of darkness. It happened at 2 p.m., a detail that carried a heavy psychological weight. For Vanessa, this wasn't a midnight mistake she could brush off, it was a midday collapse. The images from the scene were hauntingly familiar to anyone who had followed Tiger's career: a luxury vehicle, a shattered window, and a man who looked older than his years, disoriented in the bright Florida sun. When the news reached Vanessa, it wasn't just a personal shock, it was a public trauma. As a woman who had navigated the high-stakes world of political scandals, her first instinct was likely a mix of protective fury and deep, echoing sadness. She had seen this movie before. The psychological blow of a partner, relapsing into old patterns of physical pain and medication reliance is unique, it creates a sense of betrayal that is hard to vocalize. She had trusted him with her peace, and now, the world was watching him climb out of a wreck once again. While the media focused on the DUI charge and the mugshot, Vanessa was dealing with the reality inside their home. The confusion of the officers on the scene, who described Tiger as cooperative but dazed, mirrored the confusion in Vanessa's own heart. Was the man she loved the stable partner from the breakfast table, or was he the man in the Martin County jail? This moment forced a realization that Tiger's battle with his own body was far from over. The narrative of his great comeback was being replaced by a much darker story of a man struggling to stay upright. As the mugshot began to circulate globally, showing a man with heavy eyes and a weary expression, Vanessa remained behind her gates. The public was clamoring for a reaction, wondering if this was the moment she would finally walk away. As the pressure from the press reached a boiling point, the world asked, would this be the final straw for the woman who had already survived one public collapse? To understand why Vanessa didn't immediately pack her bags, one must look at the bond between Tiger Woods and Vanessa's daughter, Kai Trump. Tiger hadn't just entered Vanessa's life, he had entered her children's world as a mentor and a coach. Kai, an aspiring golf prodigy, saw Tiger not as a tabloid figure, but as the ultimate North Star for her own ambitions. This created a complex psychological web for Vanessa. When a mother sees her child thrive under the guidance of a partner, the stakes of a breakup become much more than romantic. They become structural. If Vanessa left Tiger, she wasn't just losing a boyfriend, she was removing a pivotal figure from her daughter's professional and emotional development. The daughter's dilemma was Vanessa's primary struggle in the days following the arrest. She had to weigh the damage of Tiger's public disgrace against the value of his presence in their daily lives. From a documentary perspective, we see a woman caught between two roles, the protective mother and the loyal partner. We explore the internal conflict of witnessing a troubling history repeat itself. Vanessa knew better than anyone that reputation is a currency, and Tiger's was currently in the red. However, she also knew the man behind the headlines. She saw the hours he spent helping Kai with her swing and the quiet encouragement he offered. This was a human behavior puzzle. Can you separate the man's mistakes from the mentor's value? The silence from the Trump Woods camp during those first few days was deafening. Every hour that passed without a statement allowed the public to fill the void with rumors of a split. People speculated that Vanessa was horrified, that the Trump family was distancing themselves, and that Tiger was truly alone in his recovery. Vanessa was faced with a choice that every mother dreads: do you stay and help the man you love, or do you leave to save your children from the fallout? The world expected a press release or a formal statement through an attorney. Instead, Vanessa Trump broke her silence with the modern era's version of a manifesto, a single social media post. It was a photo of the two of them, relaxed and close, accompanied by the simple, unwavering caption, "Love you." In the world of psychological power dynamics, this was a masterstroke of understated authority. By using such a simple phrase, Vanessa signaled to the public that she was not a victim of Tiger's choices, but a participant in his journey. This wasn't the desperate defense of a woman in denial, it was the calm assertion of a woman who had already seen the worst the world could throw at her. Psychologically, this served a dual purpose. First, it stabilized Tiger's fragile mental state. Knowing he still had a home base allowed him to focus on the legal and physical recovery ahead rather than the fear of total abandonment. Secondly, the post acted as a shield for her children. By presenting a united front, she signaled to the media that there was no scandal inside the house to dig for. She was taking control of the narrative by refusing to engage in the drama. We analyzed the nuance of the silence, how saying so little actually said everything. She wasn't excusing his behavior, but she was affirming his humanity. However, observers of high-profile relationships know that a public show of support is often the outer layer of a much more intense private negotiation. While the "love you" post went viral, the atmosphere inside the Jupiter Island mansion was far from celebratory. The photo was a sign of loyalty, but it wasn't a blank check. Behind that supportive photo, a very different conversation was happening, one that involved a strict condition for Tiger's return to her good graces. To truly understand the dynamics between Vanessa and Tiger, one must understand the unique, often claustrophobic social ecosystem of Palm Beach and Jupiter Island. This is a world where the dating pool is not a lake, but a very exclusive, very small pond. For a woman of Vanessa's stature, a former member of the first family with 5 children, the options for a partner who understands her lifestyle are incredibly limited. In this chapter, we take an observational look at the psychological pressure of maintaining status. To the average person, Tiger Woods is a man with a complicated history and significant baggage. But in the world of the ultra-elite, he is still the hottest bachelor on the market. He is a billionaire with a global legacy. For Vanessa, staying with Tiger isn't just about the heart, it's about the reality of her social landscape. She has found a man who can match her scale. There is a psychological phenomenon where people in high-status positions feel they can only be understood by those of equal or greater status. This creates a bond that is difficult to break, even in the face of a DUI. We examine whether Vanessa's loyalty is born of a deep soul connection or the pragmatic reality of her world. Does she stay because she believes in his redemption, or because the alternative, returning to the isolation of single life in a world that never stops judging her, is even more daunting? The Palm Beach catch suggests that in these circles, the rules of engagement are different. Mistakes are handled privately, and public loyalty is the currency that buys you entry into the next season. But even the most exclusive social standing cannot protect a person from the internal rot of physical pain and addiction. Vanessa may have been willing to stand by him in the eyes of Palm Beach, but she was not willing to watch him destroy himself in the eyes of his family. Even the most eligible man in the world cannot escape the law, and Tiger's legal team was about to make a move that would take him thousands of miles away from Vanessa's side. The tragedy of Tiger Woods is often written as a story of a fall from grace, but for Vanessa, the story was much more intimate. It was the story of a man in a body that was a prison. This chapter dives into the human side of the March 2026 arrest. When Tiger spoke to the officers on the scene, he didn't talk about golf or fame, he talked about pain. He cited his 20 surgeries, the fusing of his back, and the constant, grinding agony of his legs. Psychologically, this creates a caregiver dynamic in a relationship. Vanessa wasn't just a girlfriend, she had become a nurse, a motivator, and a gatekeeper. We explore the toll this takes on a partner. It is exhausting to love someone whose primary relationship is with their own physical suffering. The arrest was a red flag that suggested the care Vanessa was providing at home was no longer enough. The pattern of reliance on prescription medication to manage his golf-wrecked body had reached a breaking point. Friends of the couple began to express concern that Vanessa was becoming an enabler in her quest to be a protector. By shielding him from the public and smoothing over his mistakes, was she inadvertently allowing the cycle to continue? This is a classic psychological crossroads in relationships involving chronic pain or substance use. The empathy she felt for his suffering was at war with the accountability he needed to survive. The realization that Tiger's body was failing him, again, was a turning point for Vanessa. She could no window dress the situation. The rollover crash was a physical manifestation of an internal collapse. For the first time, the power dynamic shifted. Tiger was no longer the legendary athlete, he was a patient. And Vanessa was no longer the quiet supporter, she was the one who had to decide if she was willing to watch the end of a legend from the front row. With a judge granting Tiger permission to leave the country for a comprehensive wellness and recovery program, the relationship faced its ultimate test. Could it survive the space between them? As Tiger prepared to board a private jet for an international treatment facility in Switzerland, the dynamic between him and Vanessa reached a moment of absolute clarity. Reports from those close to the family suggest that the "love you" post was not a pardon, but a promise that she would be there if he did the work. This was the birth of the Vanessa ultimatum. She had learned from her years in the Trump family that you cannot change a man, but you can change your proximity to his chaos. Vanessa had evolved from a woman who endured scandals to a woman who set terms. The psychological growth here is profound. She was no longer a passenger in someone else's storm. She made it clear that while she would support his recovery, she would not be a witness to another crash. She would not allow her children to see a man they respected lose his dignity to a prescription pattern again. This chapter highlights the transformation of Vanessa into a firm matriarch. She was balancing deep empathy for his physical pain with the cold accountability required for a future together. This wasn't about anger, it was about boundaries. The exit Tiger took to Switzerland was a physical separation that allowed Vanessa to reclaim her own peace. She returned to her daily routine with her children, but with a new, harder edge to her privacy. The story of the supportive girlfriend was actually the story of a woman drawing a line in the sand. She was proving that loyalty does not mean a lack of standards. As Tiger began his intensive therapy, the power shifted entirely to Vanessa. She was the prize he had to earn back, not the other way around. The silence she maintained now was no longer protective of him, but protective of herself. As Tiger flies toward a private clinic, a final question remains: is he seeking help to save his career, or to save the woman who refused to let him hit rock bottom alone? The story of Vanessa Trump and Tiger Woods is not a tabloid romance, it is a documentary of human resilience and the high cost of a second chance. As we reach the conclusion of this chapter in their lives, we see a landscape that has been forever changed. Tiger has stepped away from the 2026 Masters, and Vanessa has returned to the quiet of her Florida home. The Trump-Woods dynasty, once a source of endless speculation, has become a study in the one-day-at-a-time reality of recovery. The emotional journey of this script brings us to a place of reflection. We see how this incident humanized a legend who often seemed untouchable. It also revealed the strength of a woman who was often dismissed as a background character in more powerful men's lives. Vanessa's silence was never a sign of weakness, it was her greatest weapon. It allowed her to navigate two of the most controversial families in American history without losing her core identity. What can we learn from their journey? It encourages the viewer to think about the nature of loyalty. Is it more loyal to stay and enable, or to stay and demand better? Vanessa chose the latter. The transformation we see is not just Tiger's attempt at sobriety and health, but Vanessa's emergence as a woman who defines her own terms. The emotional resolution is found in the quiet, not the noise. The story ends with an open road. Tiger is in Switzerland, and Vanessa is in Florida. There is no guarantee of a happily ever after, only the guarantee that they are both trying to be better than their pasts. It is a reminder that we should not be defined by our lowest moments, but by the courage it takes to look those moments in the eye and decide to change. In the quiet of Jupiter Island, the world is watching to see if Tiger can finally beat his toughest opponent, himself. Will you be there when he makes his next move?